In partnership with AvBuyer, the home of all aircraft for sale worldwide and the latest actionable intelligence in print, digital, and online. Check out avbuyer.com. Hello and welcome to the Jet Life Podcast. My name is Tom Lelio. I'm your ultimate jet guide. And with me today is Daniel and Austin of IronBird Partners. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be talking about which should you choose, jet card, fractional, charter, or maybe you come to me and just buy a jet right out. So gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today.
Tom, what an intro right there. That's a true professional.
Just flipping the switch, man.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. Super excited.
Yeah. Tell us a little about yourselves, Daniel.
Yeah, Austin and I are the managing partners here at IronBird. We're a charter consultant and a whole aircraft consultant as well for 135 companies. So we really focus on clients that trying to decide between charter, fractional, whole ownership. When it is whole ownership, we refer to partners like Tom. When it's fractional, we help you make that decision if it's NetJets or FlexJet. And then when it's charter, that's where we can step in and help you arrange good relationships with local charter operators to arrange all your travel.
Well, where are you guys based out of?
I'm in Los Angeles. Austin is currently in the desert, Palm Springs.
Cool. But you're servicing and working with operators across the country?
Yeah, globally. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's okay. Fantastic. So, Austin, one of the questions I get commonly is like, I'm just trying to dip my toe into private aviation. When's the right time to charter? When's the right time for a jet card? What is a jet card? What's the difference between that and fractional? Do you have a range or a guide for people that you kind of walk them through in terms of which solution on the surface level might be the right solution for them?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom, and one that we come across, especially after these last couple of years of, so many new people entering the market. And as we all know, there's a lot of gray space. You're not just deciding what car to purchase. There's big price tags and you're making long-term or short-term decisions and you need to have somebody. So the way that we really think about it is you need to be asked the right questions in order to make the best decision. So that's where we're, of course, biased being on the side of the client, but working with somebody who has the experience to be able to really decipher what's going to make the best experience for you, what's going to get you the most value out of the market, and what's going to be the best partner. So whether you're looking to fly the same route day in, day out for business, that's a very different work scope than all of a sudden being able to go look at 6 different locations because maybe you have a home all across the country from coast to coast, down in Mexico and up in Canada. So we like to think of it as start simple. You can always go purchase more. You can always look at bulk options. You can always look at aircraft later on, but go expose yourself, right? It's kind of like purchasing a new car. We'll bring it down, right? You can go Turo and go rent a vehicle for a day and say, wow, that was a great experience. That cost me $200 and I was able to go get exposure to it. Before you go purchase a car for $70,000 and say, wow, this was a great mistake or this was a really good opportunity. So start by looking at a small entry level opportunity, work with a local provider through an advisor or some type of operator that has a good fleet. You can guarantee high quality aircraft. You can work through the safety and really just start to understand more of the attributes that you prefer, right? At the end of the day, this should be a high degree of experience. And in order to accomplish that, you just need to know the data points to be looking for.
I love that. So getting started, you'd recommend taking a charter flight?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So what are some of the things, I don't know whoever wants to answer this, but what are some of the things that someone should look for when they're booking a charter flight that you find most people aren't aware of? And I would also preface by saying, it's interesting when I'm talking with new jet owners or new jet buyers, sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And so what would be some common things that people might be afraid to ask, but they really should be asking because it's in their best interest and we don't want to have them miss out?
Yeah, I think number one question is always safety. There's 2 main safety auditing companies. There's a few different safety associations, but really 2 main ones, Argus and Wyvern. Sure. And Argus and Wyvern have their own levels of safety. On the low end is gold for Argus and registered for Wyvern. On the high end is wingman for Wyvern and platinum for Argus. Now, just because someone's a wingman or platinum doesn't mean they're safe. We've seen incidents with wingman and platinum operators, but that's an easy place to start. As you dive deeper into these things, then you'll start getting into pilot experience. So there's minimums of how much time in type of that specific airplane, how much total time. When you start diving into some of these more questions, usually having an advisor that helps you, because you can go even deeper. You can go then into insurance amounts. And that's insurance amount is one thing that I really like to look into, because it's kind of a precursor to where these operators and airplane owners are spending money. And you know a little bit something about insurance as well, but if you're looking at large aircraft like Gulfstreams, and they may only have 50 million or maybe 100 million, that's going to say, okay, well, these people really aren't, maybe they're cutting corners on cost. They say, oh, well, I'm only going to have 50 million on a large airplane. Well, it's like, really, you should be in the 300 to 500 range of insurance. And if you're cutting cost on insurance, what else are you theoretically cutting cost on? Maintenance, pilots, maybe you're hiring pilots that aren't as qualified. You know, all those little precursors and those decisions that I think a good advisor can guide you to will help you make that, you know, that safety, not just your Argus Wyvern rating, but these other small things will help you make those safety decisions to feel like, okay, you know what, I'm in good hands and I'm going to be safe taking this trip.
Do you guys have any examples or stories of someone that, you know, chose a charter operator and it was maybe just not a good fit for them, or there was something that kind of, you know, maybe something happened, or any examples of where you've seen, unfortunately, a patron get taken advantage of because they didn't ask the right questions?
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes back to some of the membership things as well. We've seen some companies that, you know, financially were too good to be true. And I think that's a common thread maybe through the last 10 years. When you're seeing operators that pricing is too good to be true, it usually is. You'll see companies like Jetit, you'll see companies like Avant Air, I think it was Airavanti, and even Jet Suite, who, you know, all had issues where their pricing was way too good. They were below market. They were taking deposits. The deposits weren't in escrow, so they just were mingling deposits into their operating deposit. And when the company eventually went belly up, I've had clients lose hundreds of thousands. I've even had a couple clients lose a $1 million deposit, which is, you know, even these people are very wealthy, but still, like, losing hundreds or millions of dollars is a big hit for anybody, really.
And so obviously in that case, you know, we're dealing with a jet card or fractional kind of ownership, but what questions could they have asked to help them avoid the mistake of losing all that money?
I think anytime you're making a large deposit, you want a good track record. No one's ever going to be concerned about their money when they give it to NetJets. But when it's a smaller company, I think you really have to do your due diligence, understand if they are commingling your deposit with their operating funds. You really want it outside of those very large companies of, I would say, FlexJet and NetJets. If you're giving a large deposit, you want to make sure it's completely separate from operating, and it's probably, you want it to be in an escrow account as well.
Sure. Right. So that they can't commingle funds, for sure. Sticking with charter, if I'm interested in booking a charter jet, how do I figure out, like, do I get a light jet? Do I need a medium jet, a heavy jet? Like, how do I pick the right plane, I guess, for the first part? And then the next question would be, how do I pick the right operator?
Yeah. I would say if you are coming into a market, maybe you've moved or you're just starting to charter, I would probably find a good local operator, step one, and then find a good local charter broker. And I would make two phone calls. You find a good larger local charter operator that has a few airplanes that can service you at your home base airport. And then you want to bring in a charter broker to kind of cover the rest of the market. There may be airplanes that are not based at your airport, that may be transient. There may be one-way opportunities. And that's where I think the charter broker might do a little bit better of a job than charter operator. However, if you find a good local charter operator that has airplanes that fit your profile, and when I say profile, it's something that you can kind of discuss with your operator and broker, they'll ask you the typical questions. How many people do you have? Where are you going? What the distance is? And that'll give you the basics of, okay, I'm flying 3 hours. I need a plane that can take 6 people and fly 3 hours. But they'll want to dig in, or they should dig into, well, why are you traveling? Do you have an important meeting? What happens when this airplane has a mechanical issue? What's that look like? Do I pay more if there's a replacement airplane? What are my cancellation terms? What are my payment terms? A lot of these things that you should be digging into, because in the charter world, flying is a little bit more cumbersome than the jet card and fractional space.
Okay, how so?
Tend to move from charter to fractional because it's a lot easier in the fractional and jet card space than it is in charter. There's a lot more
like scheduling or logistics that are already worked out, as opposed to we got to fly by the seat of the pants because we don't know who needs to go where and when. Yeah,
I mean, why fractions and jet cards cost between 30 to 50% more than charter on some routes is because the simplicity. With jet cards and fractions, you are paying one rate. If you're flying 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you are paying that one single rate. With charter, the pricing can go up and down. The airplane that you may want to charter may charge a higher rate for shorter flights. If you are doing an overnight, or if you're staying multiple days, a charter airplane may have a daily minimum charge. It may charge different amounts based on you're flying 5 hours versus 2. You're also going to have to deal with airplane availability in the charter marketplace. Now, I'm destroying charter. It's my whole business. But let me give you all the difficult things with charter first.
Yeah,
you have to deal quite often with airplane availability. So the airplane that you really like and is a great rate may not be available that day. Now you have to book either an airplane that costs more. So that flight that you've taken 3 times that cost the same now costs 25% more because you're taking another airplane. Or the airplane may be used by the airplane owner and you booked it, but now the airplane owner says, hey, you know what? I've got an important business meeting. So I know you've had this charter booked, but I really need my airplane. Now you're booking another airplane. So there's a lot of logistics. I've had a pilot quit. Want to talk a nightmare story? I had a Gulfstream G600 flight, and they were doing a flight previous to mine. They land in Florida, and then my trip was a Florida to New York trip. And if you can hear my Boston accent coming out in Florida, sometimes it does. I apologize. So as they land in Florida, the co-pilot quits, walks out of the airplane, and says, I'm done. And and the client calls us and says, hey, the pilot just left. So we call the operator, and they go, yeah, he quit. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. We're going to airline another pilot out. But the guy just got up, said, I can't take this anymore. I'm not working for you anymore, and quits. Now, luckily, the client had some flexibility. He went the next day after a very large discount. But the charter is a non-guaranteed solution. So actually, in your charter contract, if the charter operator cannot perform for any reason, they are not guaranteeing you a replacement. Now, 90% of the time, they'll give you your money back. But with jet card and fractions, you are contractually guaranteed to get from point A to point B. So if an airplane has an issue, pilot has an issue, they will send another airplane. There are situations where they just can't on some peak days.
Sure.
As you're getting later in the evening, in some situations, they just don't have any airplanes. But contractually, they are guaranteeing you in jet cards and fractions on most to an airplane. Charter, you're not contractually guaranteed. And that's a risk. But quite often, that's why you're paying 30% less.
Right. No, I definitely certainly see the benefit of charter for individuals that are just getting their feet wet. I love the analogy of Turo. It's a great way. And that's one of the things when someone calls me and they're, hey, I want to buy my first jet. One of my first questions is, have you ever flown private before? No. Tell me when your next trip is, because I've got, charter brokers that need to, book a trip for you to make sure that this is, oh, I don't want to spend that much money on chartering a trip. Dude, if you can't afford, $20,000, $30,000 for a single trip, you probably don't even want to talk about owning a private jet, of your own. And what's nice about, you said, so it's low risk, but you're also, because they have to be so flexible and so cognizant of every little thing, you can get high prices, you can get low prices. There's the non-guarantee thing. So there's definitely benefits and risks when it comes to charter. One thing I want to clarify is, obviously the charter operator is the charter person or the company that's in charge of taking care of the aircraft and logistics of scheduling and dispatching it as well. The charter broker, let's just talk about that real quick before we move into the fractional side. Let's talk about a charter broker. They're not always part of the operator's company. They're usually operator agnostic, although a company may have a broker sales division. Let's talk about what is a charter operator? What's their main role? What are the benefits and the risks working with a charter broker? Obviously, one of the things that most charter brokers will get dinged for is well, if I went straight to the operator, I could save money instead of working through you. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. So, yeah, if you guys kind of share a little about what is the role of a charter broker, what are the pros and the cons of working with one?
Yeah, well, I'll dive into the charter operator first, and then because I've been on both sides, I've done both. The charter operator is the 135, which is the regulation that you fly under when you're flying charter. The 135 operator of the airplane. Mm-hmm. There's two real types of airplane operators. There's aircraft management companies. So just think of almost like vacation management companies. If you own a vacation home, you can give it to a company that will manage it. It'll help you rent it out to people that want to stay in your home. It will maintain it. It'll help you with everything it'll staff it if you need to. That's what an aircraft management company does. If you're a corporation or individual and you buy an airplane and you want to charter it out, it's smart to give it to a good aircraft management company. They will then go out and find other people. They'll find direct retail clients or charter brokers, and they will charter your airplane when you're not utilizing it. You can also give your airplane to a company if you're not even interested in charter.
Right, they just handle the logistics of it. Yeah,
which I would suggest. Some people like to do it on their own, but I think there's always value in giving your airplane to an aircraft management company. I think some of the downsides to an aircraft operator is they're very focused on, as they should be, very focused on their fleet and their airplanes. They're not as focused on the entire market as a whole of how to service that client. They really want you to fly on one of their airplanes. And I think that's where the value of a charter broker comes into play. A charter broker will come in and a good charter broker will analyze the entire market of all the airplanes available. They'll provide you guidance on here are good operators. And even within each operator, there may be a good operator, but there may be bad airplanes or bad crew members in that operator. So they'll say, here's a good operator, and here's an airplane inside that operator that I really like to utilize. We've had success in the past. And they should provide you guidance. Sometimes charter brokers don't have a ton of expertise in the operations. So if there's crew duty issues or mountainous airports, I would say when you're working with a broker, you want to make sure that they have some operational expertise. And I think that really helps when you've worked for an operator before, that you get in front of a lot of issues, crew duty issues, overnight, owner approval, a lot of these issues that can happen, you really want a charter broker or even your rep at the operator to help you get in front of a lot of these issues. A good operator or a good broker will answer the questions before you have them. You shouldn't walk into a trip and be surprised that, oh, I only have this airplane flew earlier today and now I can't be late because the crew's going to run out of duty time. A good operator or a good broker is going to get in front of those questions for you and brief you so you're not surprised.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. So in that sense, it's worth to pay the extra to work with a broker over an operator.
It can be. If you have the same flight and you're operating, you've got a house in Aspen, that's the only flight you do, and this operator has the airplanes and they're always available, then work with that operator. But if that operator is having availability issues or doesn't always have airplanes that you want, then I think adding at least one broker, I would suggest against shopping with different brokers and different operators. I would say work with one really good operator, work with one really good broker, call them both, and then see what they can come up with. Because the market, everyone has access to the market pretty much. So anyone can call and get this information. Now, some brokers and some operators have different relationships, so they can get preferred cancellation terms, pricing. But calling 5 different brokers, they're all going to provide the same airplanes, the same similar pricing. Really find a good operator, find a good broker you trust, and I would say stick with them.
Cool. No, I appreciate that. Makes a lot of sense. So I've taken my first charter flight. Now I'm ready to get into aviation as like an owner of some kind. What is the difference between a jet card and a fractional ownership?
Yeah, it's with a fractional ownership, you're actually purchasing a portion of that asset. It's quite often, especially if you're doing it through a business, there's some tax advantages, just similar to purchasing a whole aircraft. With the jet card, you are purchasing normally a block of hours or an access to a block of hours at a specific.
Gotcha.
You're getting both. You're getting a guaranteed rate with both. Now, the rate may fluctuate a little bit as fuel, and every year there's usually a percentage increase. But the main difference between the fraction and the jet card is with a fraction, let's say a net jet fraction, you're buying an eighth of an airplane that guarantees you a certain amount of hours. You pay up front for that asset cost. And then at the end of your term, you're either renewing or you're selling that asset back.
Oh, interesting.
One of the tough parts about it is, where fractional companies make a lot of money is they are purchasing those assets at a discount. But when they sell you that fraction of the asset, they're not passing that discount to you. And then when you go and sell back that asset, they're really not giving you the true value of that asset. So they do a great job of making money on either side of that transaction.
Yes, I've certainly seen that where, you sell it back to us, you paid $1 million into this, you sell it back to us and we'll give you $600K for it, and it's like, okay. So
really that asset when you bought it was 800 and they sold it to you for $1 million. And when they, when you sold it back, it was 700 and they bought it back at 600. So they do a good job of making money on both sides of those transactions. It's a good business.
So why would I choose a jet card over a fractional? Or is it more, usually the fractional might require more upfront costs, or the fractional is better for more usage, whereas the jet card is better for less usage and less upfront costs? Like, what's the difference between those two from which one do I choose?
Yeah, those are both true. Another thing is the fraction is usually a longer term. So you're usually getting into a fraction of 5 years. So it's a longer, and then usually the jet cards are quite often 25, 50. When you start getting into the 75 or 100, that's when you look into fractions and leases. Usually for the 25, 50-hour flyers, that's when jet cards work well. We're seeing a lot of clients do a combination, which I think is smart. They'll buy they'll buy 25 hours on their jet card or 50 hours on their jet card, and then they'll charter 25 or 50 hours, depending on the trips. Another advantage between charter and jet cards, and it kind of comes back to that guaranteed rate, is when you're traveling one way or short distances, there are some solutions where jet cards are going to be better priced than charter.
Oh,
If you're chartering coast to coast, New York, LA, or San Francisco, Florida, there's some good one-way pricing in the charter market. But if you're not chartering those main routes and you're flying one way, then you're, for jet cards, although you may be paying a higher hourly rate, because say you're flying from Sun Valley, Idaho to Dallas, Texas. If you were to charter an airplane, you're going to pay for round trip pricing even though you're flying one way.
mm-hmm.
So at that point, jet cards are going to be a better cost, because instead of paying for an airplane to go Dallas to Des Moines empty and then Des Moines back to Dallas live, you're only going to pay for your live leg.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
having both, 25 hours of jet card and then utilizing your operator or broker when maybe the charter market can provide more value is a good way to have a balanced portfolio.
Yeah. No, I love that you kind of put that. I like how you put it, where it doesn't have to be an either or. So you don't have to go to the charter and then you step up to the jet card and then you step up to fractional and then you step up to ownership. You can do a hybrid model throughout. And the whole thing behind everything is working with someone as an advocate or a guide to help you navigate this, just like you would have a realtor navigate, different homes, different owners, different vendors. I mean, that's kind of where a charter broker or an advocate, kind of like what you guys do at IronBird. Why don't you maybe talk a little bit about what role you guys play in this whole scenario for people?
This is a good one for Austin. I'll let him tackle that one.
Yeah, I mean, we found ourselves, obviously our background is very different. Dan has an immense amount of knowledge and has, helped people purchase everything from selling on a charter desk for an operator, working for brokers, working through, more of that larger portfolio approach through jet cards and fraction purchasing and management of all of those assets. And I was more on the operator side in aircraft management, going through that. And as we quickly found ourselves, there's a lot of different incentives for people, and there's a lot of misalignment in where some of these advisors or supposed advisors, and at no fault of anybody's own, can sometimes create that guidance, right? So as Dan mentioned earlier, an aircraft management company, they exist because they manage individually owned assets. They have to keep that is their highest priority, is to keep those customers and those clients at the forefront of every single decision. So when they propose a flight, that's going to be on their fleet, maybe in a specific airplane. If you're in the open charter market, maybe that isn't the best fit, and maybe there's something else. So we like to describe it in a way, Tom, where we wanted to reverse what side of the table we were sitting on, where there's an immense amount of gaps and there's a lot of knowledge that we've been able to collect and expose ourselves to, that we can help guide better aviation buying decisions. And that comes from everything of what we can physically support in-house as far as ad hoc purchasing, or, being able to work through partners like yourself and really kind of align people with trusted resources in specialty spaces, or be able to actually walk somebody through and just start to highlight some of these questions we're talking about. I mean, I think we can probably list off almost 100 variables that we've covered so far, and it's been a 20-minute conversation. So
Sure.
If you compound this across an individual flight or an individual purchase, and I'm sure on your side, there's such complexity to everything that it's making sure that you have somebody who has an independent bias and only cares about your best interest, because this industry must require good experience, because if not, that's when it all fails. So our goal is work with people who appreciate that, who are willing to, kind of provide some degree of payment for that level of service. We don't work with everybody, right? We don't select some of the people who are just trying to fly empty leg flights or something like that. Now, we're here to offer guidance and we're here to help, but really it's those who are interested in making intelligent decisions across any aviation solution that's out there.
So what is the services like, what you guys offer? What does that usually cost somebody?
It's varied. I think that we try to make sure that, again, if it fits for us and it allows us to actually provide good value, our goal is always to create something that's at or below market value. So if we can go out and quarterback something and you're not going to pay any extra, that's a win for us and it's a win for you. We can elevate that service, if we can elevate that overall experience, and we can keep it at or below, that's fantastic. So for charter, we do have obviously, a service baked into each of those trips where it's just going to become at a margin. Typically, we try to create that margin not on the back of a client, it's on procuring really good airplanes at a discounted rate through buying power, through being creative and understanding how airplanes are moving and some of the optimization there. There's a lot of ways that this can be a win-win. I think that where a lot of people get bad raps is, no different in the sales and acquisition space where you've got, double purchasing and different things behind closed doors that create this lack of transparency. And that reduces so much of the trust where we don't want to price ourselves in a way, or we don't want to gouge somebody in a way that, we do one trip for them or we help them go procure one product and all of a sudden they don't call us the next year because they realize that was fairly inequitable and that wasn't a good approach, right? Yeah. So we would rather sit there and say, look, Tom, we want to work with you for the next 25, 30 years. We want to help you follow that journey of, you're chartering a Phenom 300 for a year, then all of a sudden you're into super mids, then all of a sudden you're into heavies, then maybe you go to a jet card, then all of a sudden they're calling you and they're making that purchase and, having a great acquisition experience. So It's really just making sure that we can provide a value at a market degree of pricing.
So on average, should a charter, jet card, fractional kind of a client expect to pay maybe somewhere in the realm of the realm of 5 to 10% of whatever they're going to pay for the additional advocacy? So, for example, for a jet broker, commission could be anything for 4 to 6%. I mean, that's just kind of, so when you're paying, for your jet, somewhere in that there's a 4 to 6% swing for the broker to help facilitate the deal. Is it similar in the charter world where we're dealing with a range?
Well, I think there is a range, and it's completely unregulated. So the charter brokerage is so. I've seen pricing where people are charging 25, 30%. I've seen pricing where they're doing it 2 to 5%. I think a fair range is between 10 and 15%. We tend to just fall at the 10% because it's easy, it's transparent, right? It's just straightforward, and it makes it easy for the client. They understand what we're charging. It's our goal to go out and provide that value. We want to provide not just finding airplanes that they wouldn't find on their own, which we do. It's really a single source of information. So when they call in, they're not calling into a company that they don't know who they are, they don't know what their trip is. And really it's the customer support of getting in front of issues. So understanding when airplanes are positioning, when they're coming on or off duty. We've had plenty of times where we haven't seen an airplane depart from their positioning airport, that their live leg is not for 3 or 4 hours, but we've seen their positioning leg get delayed. And the operator didn't call us. And if we were the direct retail client, they probably would have only known about this delay when they showed up at the airport. So getting in front of that, a lot of those issues, and really even before we actually book an airplane, we say, okay, this person wants to depart at this time. What's the airplane schedule look like? That's really the value I think that a good charter broker or consultant will provide, is getting in front of those issues before an operator does. Operators are busy. They're focused on pilots. They're booking cars and rental cars and hotels. Sometimes because of that, some of the client communication it falls a little short. And I think that's
naturally.
what brokers provide a lot of value of not being annoying to the operator, but really making sure all the communication and all the things are checked off their list to provide the best service to the client. And it's a win-win for the operator. If the broker is helping the operator and the operator then performs better or communicates better to the client through the broker, it should be a win for that operator.
Absolutely.
And Tom, I think another aspect to that is, you as we kind of look at that pricing band, there's a lot of trust that goes into it with not just who a client is entrusting their service with and that degree of, whether it's a broker, whether it's an operator, whoever's kind of advising them in that role. Obviously, they understand somebody's making money throughout that. On the other half, what they don't see sometimes is maybe you like to go out of a certain FBO for every single trip, and maybe every operator doesn't fly out of that FBO. Well, maybe we'll go eat that $1,000 cost every single flight because we want to make it as easy as possible for you. Maybe we had a pilot that was sick the day before and had to go find an entirely new airplane, and in the market that was 4 or 5 or 6 or 10% more. Maybe we won't pass that along to you because, again, there's a lot of that dependency. So back to Dan's point early on, where when you find somebody that you really enjoy working with at any degree of service and products throughout the industry, it's so important to kind of reflect on what are they doing that maybe we're not seeing. And when people start to shop, you start to erode a little bit of that. So it's not necessarily that we're saying, stick with one person and trust them through and through. You should always be an intelligent purchaser in anything, whether you're going to Costco when you're buying groceries or you're procuring your next flight. But one of the most important parts is enjoy and entrust the people that you're working with. And it's really all of this industry, we're working with the same 15,000 airplanes in the United States, right? Nobody is offering some immense differentiator that's going to change your life in a huge way. So enjoy who you work with and know that they have your best interest through your own vetting process.
Oh, man, I really appreciate that. Well, gentlemen, there's so much more I want to talk to you guys about, so we'll definitely have to have you on again. But please tell us, where can people find out more about what you guys are doing? How can they connect with you? If they're interested in the charter, fractional jet card world, then they're looking for a guide to help them. I'm the ultimate jet guide. I can help them with the purchase, but I would love for them to have an ultimate charter fractional jet card guide to go to. So where can people find out more information about you guys?
Our website, flyironbird.com. We also try and do some good LinkedIn updates. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, myself, Daniel Harris, or Austin Borkowski, it's a good way to connect with us either through our website or LinkedIn.
Awesome. And you guys got a podcast as well, right?
We're just trying to be like you, Tom, when we grow up.
That's great. No, I definitely encourage anyone watching to go over to their YouTube channel and check out the podcast. There's some great guests, some really great insight for aviation people that are trying to understand, pulling back the curtain on aviation. So thank you, gentlemen, both for being here, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Awesome, Tom. Thank you, bud. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.